Hello and welcome to our BNEWS election coverage of the 2022 Massachusetts state races. Today we'll have a debate between two Democratic candidates for the 21st Middlesex state rep seat, incumbent Ken Gordon and challenger Timmy Sullivan, who are vying for a nomination in the September 6th state primary. We will have 1-minute opening statements from each candidate, followed by questions from members of the press. The questions will come from BCAT News Director Rich Hosford and Burlington Buzz creator NICCI KADILAK. Thank you. Candidates then will have an opportunity to ask each other questions, followed by a 2-minute closing statements, which will be also used as a function as a rebuttal to any previous statements or comments. We'll start by introducing the candidates. First, we have incumbent Ken Gordon, resident of Bedford, in the first elected to the seat in 2012. He was sworn in January of 2013. Is currently the chair of the Joint Committee on Public Service. Has been practicing law as a practicing lawyer for over 2 decades, specializing in representing employees who suffer discrimination or wrongful termination at the workplace. Our challenger, Timmy Sullivan, a lifelong resident of Burlington, who attended UMass Amherst, where he was president of the Student Government Association. He interned for Senator Elizabeth Warren in DC, where he helped with constituent services. Self-described advocate working on issues related to the environment, access to debt-free public higher education, access to mental health resources, among other things. And to introduce myself, I'm Kevin Sullivan. I am a recreation commissioner here in Burlington, local business owner, and I've moved up to the big time from this Council on Aging debate to this debate. So pardon me if I do anything wrong on behalf of the candidates, and hopefully this helps the residents get a good idea of where you stand in your views. So we're going to start with the opening statements, and Timmy Sullivan, you're going to go first. And for the record, we do have the same last name, but we are not related. Ken was a little nervous on that, I think, in the beginning.
Perhaps a bit.
Okay, Timmy?
Just happen to live in the largest concentration of the Irish outside of Ireland. Thank you so much for having us here and giving voters in Burlington, Bedford, and Lexington Precinct 6 the opportunity to hear our statements. My name is Timmy Sullivan. I'm a lifelong resident of this district, and it is an honor to run for state representative in the Democratic primary. I'm running because I want to be a champion for our public schools. I'm a proud product of these public schools, and I know the value of our public education. So it's saddening to me that here in the education state, far too many families have to take on enormous amounts of debt to send their children to pre-kindergarten or to go to our public colleges, which is why for 2 years I've been the executive director of a nonprofit which has helped push our state to make robust and profound investments in our public education system so that no family has to break the bank to get an education. I'm also an activist on climate. I led a campaign to get one of the state's largest public emitters of fossil fuels to transition to 100% renewable energy by 2032. This is the same type of leadership that I will take to the State House and help transition our district to 100% renewable energy, and I'm proud to have the backing of the Sierra Club in this race for our track record and for our vision on climate. And I'm also running because I'm concerned about the water in the district where we live. This is the same water that I cook and bathe with, that my family cooks and bathes with. We are too often experiencing drought and PFAS contamination in our water. And so I will take these personal experiences of this local issue and use all of the resources at my disposal as your state representative. I look forward to the opportunity to talk with Ken about our ideas and hopefully earn your vote in September 6th.
Thank you, Timmy. And Ken, and you can go a little bit longer just because Tim will try to go with the times. but
Oh.
I'm still new at it. So.
Okay, that's okay, but it was 1 minute, right?
Right.
Was the rule? Okay, I'm going to try to stick to that. Hi, everyone. Thank you to Kevin, to Rich, to NICCI, and to BCAT for allowing our residents to have this opportunity to meet my challenger and myself. I'm State Representative Ken Gordon, and it's been my honor to serve as your state representative for the last 10 years. I ran for this because I wanted to be sure that we would have a representative who had not only good ideas, but who was prepared to turn those good ideas into results. I didn't want our state representative to have to face a learning curve or a headwind. I felt that way then, and I feel that way now, and that's why I'm seeking re-election. In the time I've served, I co-authored, filed, and advocated for paid family and medical leave, and I still watch over it. We were the first state in the nation, actually one of the two first states in the nation, ourselves in Washington, to pass this program into law, and I'm proud that we continue to watch out for our families as we do. I addressed our traffic problems here in Burlington, and I helped connect the town to the MWRA with a $3.5 million grant. In the last year alone, I was able to help Burlington emerge from COVID challenges by bringing in $100,000 for our residents, $150,000 for our small businesses, and $75,000 for the COA to help our seniors stay connected. And that's why I've been endorsed by Maura Healey, by Senator Ed Markey, by our congressional representatives in Seth Moulton and Catherine Clark, and 9 of the 10 select board members in Burlington and Bedford. But mostly, I'm looking for your endorsement through your votes in this year's September 6th primary and the days leading up to it. Thank you very much. I enjoy looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Ken. So we're going to start with the first question, and it's going to come from Rich Oxford.
Thank you, Kevin.
And it'll go to, Ken, you'll go first, and we'll just keep on alternating.
Okay.
And it's 90 seconds.
All right. What do you think the state can and should do to further help those economically impacted by the pandemic and subsequent inflation we're all seeing in grocery stores and at the gas pump?
Thank you, Rich, for that question. And what we have been hard at work taking resources that we have through our state budget and through ARPA funds to get them into the hands of our residents and into the hands of small businesses. It's been a priority of mine, and as I mentioned in the opening statement, that's why when our first round of ARPA went out, I made sure that Burlington would get its fair share. In doing that, I was able to direct $150,000 to the Burlington Area Chamber of Commerce so that it could bring small businesses in and help them share in our recovery here. Just as important, I was able to get $100,000 to people helping people because people were facing severe challenges during that time, unemployment and otherwise. And as I said, I was able to get $75,000 to the COA. Looking into the future, we've got to continue to look at ways that we can direct these funds. We've got a bill pending that we're looking at tax credits and other forms of relief, and we'll continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And Timmy, do you need that question asked again, or
Sure.
are you good?
Okay. What do you think the state can and should do to further help those economically impacted by the pandemic and subsequent inflation we are all seeing in grocery stores and at the gas pumps?
I think there's a lot that we can do to save costs for families who are struggling from the pandemic. First and foremost, for those who have lost their job at any point of this, I think that has laid bare the vulnerabilities that employment-based health insurance has on our economy. That's why I'm a supporter of a single-payer model that will actually save costs in Massachusetts on our healthcare. I want to help and see Massachusetts be at the forefront of healthcare leadership again in this country. I think now is also the time that we have to transition to 100% renewable energy. And that means not just for our homes and how we're doing heating and electric, but that also means for our transportation. There are not ways in this community viably to get around with public transit. If I want to get to Alewife and Cambridge to see my family, it takes me 25 minutes from where I live by car. It takes almost an hour and a half, and I have to walk a mile to get to the bus stop. That is not a viable way for us to have transportation if we're not making those robust investments in fare-free public electric transit in our community. I also think we can invest in local agriculture, which is good for our climate and helps reduce costs for food for families while keeping things healthy.
Thank you. So Rich, are you going to do the next
I
question?
think we're going to go to NICCI.
Okay, so we'll go to NICCI, and this time, just so we keep on alternating, Timmy, you'll have the first opportunity to answer the question. NICCI?
No audio.
Yeah, I'm muted. That's my fault. Sorry. Hi, everybody.
Thank you.
How would you hold your colleagues accountable to ensuring the laws we pass are reflective of the values of our state and protecting the most marginalized of our residents?
Great question. I think one of the biggest obstacles right now to holding our elected representatives accountable is that Massachusetts is the least transparent state house in the entire country. And by this I mean two things. One, our state representatives have exempted themselves from public records law. And two, the votes that our representatives take in committee are private to us. I think that's wrong and that's a problem, which is why I'm the only one of the candidates who has signed the Voters Deserve to Know pledge, committing 100% of my voting record will be public and available, and I will fight so that is the rule for all state representatives so that we all know how our representatives are voting to ensure that they are representing our best interests. I also think it's important that we start disclosing lobbyist meetings because those are not necessarily disclosed, and that has a huge impact on how legislation is crafted.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you, Nikki, for that question as well. You know, I have experience in doing this. In fact, I have experience currently in holding our government accountable for how they carry out our laws. As I said in the opening statement, I filed, co-authored, and passed paid family and medical leave. Once we passed that into law, it went over to the administration to issue regulations and actually manage the program. And I heard from time to time, in fact, often, that the administration was falling behind. Currently, there's an issue that came to me which identifies a misinterpretation of what we passed. Employers are not being allowed to provide employees with the difference between what they get under the program and what they get and what the employee actually earns. I went to the administration. I discussed it with them. They were not willing to budge. So I went to House leadership, Senate leadership. I went to the Republican leadership and the Democratic leadership and to the business community to discuss this very issue. We filed an amendment to the budget. The House and the Senate passed it, sent it to the governor. The governor had another idea, and I'm currently working with the administration to address this fix, and I intend to have it solved. We in the legislature can form oversight hearings, and we can use the authority that we have in passing what we do to make sure that, as you said, Nikki, our values are carried out.
Thank you, Ken. So we're going to go back to Rich for the next question. And at this point, Ken, you're going to be first again. We just keep on alternating.
Okay.
All right. Excuse me. The question is, many people, especially first-time buyers, are finding it difficult to find housing that they can afford to purchase, and renters are also seeing their rent go up. What do you think can be done to address this issue?
Well, thank you, Rich. One of the things that actually is being done is a law that's currently coming into play with respect to MBTA communities, Burlington and Bedford being among them, that will require a zone for multifamily housing that be created. Regulations were just issued in the last few days, in fact. And so what we've got to have is the opportunity for our communities to offer resources for our seniors, for young people coming back from school, to have a place that they can afford to stay. I'm also interested in a statewide program to provide for unattached accessory dwelling units, which is to say small in the appropriate yard size, a small unit that someone can put behind their home or next to their home to create essentially an in-law apartment or one of these small places. That will also create opportunities for housing. Housing is one of our greatest challenges. Our area has a vibrant life sciences economy, but one challenge that these companies face is housing. They have access to a tremendously well-educated workforce, so they come here, but they've got to find housing for their workers. So it's something that we're continuing to look into.
Thank you, Ken. So we're going to go back to, and the next question.
Nope.
Oh, Tim, would you like an opportunity
I
to answer that
absolutely would.
question? I'm
Yes,
sorry.
Thank you.
I'm trying to do my job too well. Go ahead.
No worries. I understand this intimately. My parents bought our home in Burlington when they were my age. It is no longer possible for a young person like myself to come back to the community that raised me and become a first-time homeowner. And I think that that's wrong. We need to have a state representative who cares about using state incentives for a diversity of housing stock, which is the kind of state representative that I will be. That means that we can have multifamily units. We can have smaller homes that are also more energy efficient. There's no reason that we need to keep having real estate developers be building these really large homes that are driving up the rates and pricing out our seniors, pricing out families, making it untenable for folks like myself to come back here and live and contribute to the community that has helped and raised them. So I think that's really important, having the diversity and promoting the diversity of housing stock, not just in MBTA communities, but all over the state, because housing can't be solved in one or two communities. It has to have a comprehensive program across our Commonwealth. I also support the Massachusetts Rental Voucher Program, rights for renters. Also, there are a lot of renters in Burlington, and I would like to see a tenant association form so that our renters are also protected and not priced out of their homes.
Thank you, Timmy. So now we go back to Rich and his question, and it'll go to Timmy first.
Actually, we're going to go to Nikki for this next one. We're going to alternate.
We're going to alternate. I'm sorry.
All right.
Nikki, save me.
Hello. Okay, how do you plan to engage with communities that have less representation in the legislature to ensure their voices and needs are being heard?
Okay, and this time we're starting with Tim.
Yes. Awesome. I'm really excited by this question. I think that myself, I bring a lot to the table in terms of reaching out and helping to represent some of these communities. I'm a queer person. I think that I would be the first out and openly queer person to hold this seat if and when elected. So representing Burlington, Bedford, and Lexington's LGBTQ plus community would be really important to me. I'm also a young person. I think this is an important demographic to involve in our politics and help and bring fresh perspective to the State House. And I would love to engage more students in our politics. This is something I do for work now as I train young people in the fundamentals of grassroots community organizing. I would love to be holding student office hours to bring young people into our politics and help them run for office. I'm also partner with an immigrant. And I think it's important for us to be bringing immigrant voices into the way that we are legislating in the Commonwealth and also here in Burlington. One of Burlington's largest minority populations is South Asian, and I think that it is important that we are also making important inroads with the South Asian community in Burlington to help and represent those perspectives at the statewide level.
Thank you.
And Nikki, thank you for asking that question because it's important. One of the most important things that we do in the legislature is that we build coalitions with other members of the legislature, and we listen to each other to learn the challenges that occur in other districts and within other communities. I've done that from the day I started in the legislature. I've learned a lot, and there's a level of trust that exists between myself and my colleagues. And so we've worked together when it comes to things like raising the minimum wage. Of course, paid family and medical leave helps many different communities. And a bill that I filed this session that I'm confident I'll continue to work on, I'm confident we can get it done, is called the Common Start bill, which will provide near universal access to preschool and early childhood and early child care. I'm an employment discrimination lawyer by trade. I've actually been doing it for about 30 years now. I represent people from marginalized communities. I've been standing up for people from marginalized communities my entire professional life. I continue to take into account the needs of people from different communities, bring that into my work. I think it's reflected in many of the issues that I've championed over the years, and will continue to keep that in mind.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken. So we're going to come back to Rich this time, and Ken, you're going to answer first. I'm getting the hang of this now. It's getting a little bit easier.
Keeps alternating.
Give me a couple more hours. We'll be good.
I don't think anybody wants that. A couple more hours. All right, we're going to turn to the economy now. So the 21st District has seen a boom in the biotech and medical device industries, and many municipal and business leaders see that as the way of the future. How would you help support these growing fields of business in the district?
Rich, thank you also for that question, because I have been involved in helping people from life sciences for several years now. In fact, we're organizing a second forum for folks from that industry to be able to describe the challenges that they face and the successes that they've experienced here in Burlington and the surrounding area. Secretary Keneally has been invited to come and told us he's interested in doing that. In fact, we did this 2 years ago at Northeastern, and we had a very successful dialogue continuing to meet these needs. We have emerging businesses coming into this district all the time. They call us, and we've been helpful in establishing and helping them establish their footprint here. Some of the challenges they face with respect to utilities, we've been helpful to them, and in other areas. This is, as you say, the most important industry that we have, because it not only employs people from various levels of education in the area, but it also brings employees and employment to our area, and these employees shop at our stores, eat at our restaurants, and keep our circle of our economy vibrant. So as you recognize, this is essentially the most important industry that we have, and we've got to protect it.
Thank you.
All right.
Do you want me to read it again?
No, I'm familiar with the question.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
This one's a bit of a challenge for me. I see my role as a state representative first and foremost as representing the people of this district and the individual voters and residents in the community. And so while I think that it is important and a great opportunity that we have these new businesses and industry coming into the community that help and fund things like our education, things that I know that I have benefited from and other residents have benefited from, I want to make sure that the impact is always positive on the residents. I think about, one, our resource use. I know a lot of residents that I talk with are concerned about water, both in terms of how much water might be used by these businesses, as well as regulation to make sure that, particularly in life sciences, water contamination, there's a high regulation for that so that we are not continuing to see contamination in our water. And I also don't want this to have an adverse impact on our housing stock, like we just said, by inadvertently driving up housing costs. So first and foremost, I would like to approach this from learning and leaning into how residents are feeling about the way that this impacts the character of the community.
Thank you. And we'll go to NICCI now. And the first question would go to Tim.
Hello. Okay. What would you say is a challenge or a concern that is unique to our district, and how would you advocate for that and balance it with the needs and desires of other districts?
Definitely. I think water is in some ways unique and not unique at all. Like I've talked about, a lot of residents are concerned both by our perennial droughts and the PFAS contamination in the water. I think this is an opportunity for us to really think about our relationship to our natural resources, which is what makes it not so unique. And again, why I'm proud to have the support of folks like the Sierra Club and thinking about a holistic approach to our climate. Something that I think is really necessary for us to do is start to make investments in things like rainwater capture so that we are able to conserve as much of our water resources as possible and do some of that recycling with the natural resources. I also think that it's important that we start transitioning this district immediately to 100% renewable energy. I think that the commercial sector of Burlington, all of that parking lot and mall space, is a great opportunity for us to build public solar that helps reduce energy costs for folks and is also reducing our fossil fuel emissions so that we are not instigating the conditions that persist in the droughts.
Thank you. And Ken?
Yes, thank you again. And in this case, I'm gonna agree somewhat with Timmy. Water has been a unique challenge to this district because historically Burlington has relied on its own well water system, but over time, that's been difficult to maintain. Costs are associated with it, and the drought has affected it. 5 years ago, town meeting decided to hook up to the MWRA, and in 2020, I was able to advocate successfully with Secretary Keneally to bring in a $3.5 million MassWorks infrastructure grant to offset about a third of the cost of the MWRA hookup. Now that hookup is currently bringing 1 million gallons of water to Burlington per day, and by the end of next year it will be bringing in 3.5 million gallons per day, which is what we need, what we've been using on an average basis. And so while that's a challenge, it's also been solved. It's in the process of being solved. Rich Hosford has come out several times to do stories on BNEWS about the progress of this project, which is ahead of schedule. So that has been a unique challenge to Burlington because it has not been a member of the MWRA, but that problem is that the solution is on its way.
Thank you. So we're going to change now to questions from the candidates to the other candidate. I've never done this before, so this will be interesting. Ken, we're going to start with your question first to Timmy. And you have 90 seconds again
For the answer, right?
for the answer.
Okay.
The question would be nice under 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I can do that. Mr. Sullivan, thank you for participating in this forum so that voters in Burlington can get a little more insight into their choice in this election. And actually, my question is going to dovetail into my answer to the last question. Just this week, I was surprised to learn that you mailed a letter to many of our residents under the title, and I've got it here, Burlington deserves reliable, clean water and a state representative who will fight for it. And what you describe is a perennial problem that has affected Burlington. You talk about PFAS, as you just did. You talk about access to water and the effect on the drought. What you don't talk about is all the work that was done by the town of Burlington, by myself and Senator Friedman to solve that problem. And what you don't talk about is not only that 5 years ago there was a vote taken to hook up to the MWRA, which is not affected by a PFAS problem. In fact, is currently not affected by the drought condition. It's not under the level 3 drought. But you don't talk about the fact that your state representative, me, together with Senator Friedman, brought in the $3.5 million MassWorks infrastructure grant so that the residents of Burlington are not funding this all by themselves. Now, as I said, we're already receiving 1.5 million gallons of water every day, and we're going to be getting all of our water by the end of the year. I wondered when I read this letter what the reason was, why you didn't talk about the solution that's on its way. I asked John Sanchez, who's the DPW director here in Burlington, if you asked him what's been done by the people of this town, and he said no. I asked Paul Sagarino, the town administrator, well, did you ask him? And he said no. But you sent this out anyway.
So just to interrupt, Ken, it's a question.
It is a question. I'm going to get to the
We want to
question.
get to the question.
I'm going to get to the question. I'm going to tell you that also, as I said, Rich Hosford's been reporting on this issue and talking about the fact that the solution is underway. So my question is, really, was it just that you didn't do your homework, or did you know that the solution was on its way and you chose not to put it in your letter because you're looking for a vote?
All right, Timmy?
Neither of those is correct. This has to do with the relationship that we have to our natural resources, which is something I think a lot about as I think about climate politics. The things that I mentioned in my letter are making sure that there are at-home treatment for folks so that they are able to treat their water in their homes, which is something that I still think we need to be fighting for, regardless of the work that has been done already, which I'm really thankful for local leadership, both elected and constituent leadership, that has stood up to say that Burlington deserves clean and reliable water. I think what I've also outlined in there is plans to help and invest in rainwater capture and recycling, which I think regardless is a good thing for us to do as we are approaching increased levels of temperature that will make the drought conditions even worse. Maybe not just in the River Valley where we're getting the water from now, but across the Commonwealth. We are going to see so much damage from climate change that we need to fundamentally rethink the way that we look at our public utilities and look at our relationship to natural resources. And so after conversation after conversation after conversation with folks at the door who still expressed concerns to me about contamination in the water and access to water in the community, this is who I was responding to, constituents who had still brought up concerns.
Thank you. And then Timmy, your question for Ken?
Sure. As I have mentioned earlier, Massachusetts has the least transparent state house in the country. Representatives have exempted themselves from public records law, and the votes that you take in committee are private. They do not have to be disclosed to constituents. Twice, you have voted against making committee votes public. How can your constituents trust that you are working for us when you have voted against transparency?
Well, Timmy, actually, thank you for asking me that question because I think it's an important conversation. I agree with you. We should be more transparent, and the committee votes, I think, should be online. In fact, you and I talked about this once before, and I told you that I chair a committee, and Rule 8 of our rules, which is online, tells people that they have a right to see our votes, and we'll give them those votes within 24 business hours. Before the rules, when the session began this year, I sat down with the speaker and I told him my concern. And I told him I wanted to see these votes online. And he said he wasn't ready to make that decision yet because he said, I want our committees to be able to make the decisions themselves about their rules. And I said, well, okay. We had a little discussion and I said, okay, I'll give you the opportunity or the time to change your mind because with this speaker, I've been able to work with him that way. But if you decide to assign a committee to me, I'm going to put those votes online. And he said, fine, like I told you, it will be up to you. I do chair the joint committee, I'm the House chair of the Joint Committee on Public Service. We do have our votes online. As I said, Rule 8 of our votes shows exactly what to do, how to get our votes. In the 2 years that I've been chair of that committee, nobody has asked for those votes. Nobody, including you, Timmy. And so, at the end of the day, I agree with you. We can do more. But my votes are available online. My committee's votes are available online.
All right, thank you. And that's time. So we're going to get to the closing statements at this point, and we're going to start with Timmy, just as we keep on alternating. And you have 2 minutes for the closing statement.
Great. Thank you again, everyone, for the opportunity to have this spirited conversation. I am running again because I want to be a champion for our community. That means our public schools, our environment, making sure that I am working and accountable for you by making 100% of my voting record public, and I will vote to make that the law of the State House. I want to be clear in this district and in this race. I do not take my marching orders from the Speaker of the House. How the Speaker of the House wants me to vote on an issue is no matter to me. How my constituents want me to vote on an issue is what is important to me. And that is the type of state representative that I will be. That is why I will help and fight to pass debt-free public higher education so that the average student debt in this community no longer is $32,000. It will be $0 for a graduate from a public school. That is why I will fight so that we can transition to 100% renewable energy so that folks are not having to go to the pump and pay $5 for gas, are not having to have their rates be hiked by Eversource and National Grid. And that is why I am fighting so that we can change the relationship with our natural resources so that we have rainwater capture and things that are going to keep our community safe, livable, and prosperous. Thank you so much, and I hope to earn your vote on September 6th.
Thank you. And Ken?
Thank you very much. And again, thank you for engaging in this interesting debate. I have been, for Burlington and for this 21st Middlesex, a state representative who has prioritized a couple of things. First, being available and accessible. I've had office hours, public office hours every month for the last 10 years. And second, to be a state representative who actually delivers and doesn't just talk about delivering. I wasn't elected to go to Beacon Hill to just make speeches. I was elected to go to Beacon Hill to create success, to bring things back to this district and to bring things back for this Commonwealth. And that's why I'm so proud of our program of paid family and medical leave, something that I filed, co-authored, and within 10 years was put into law. I was called to the White House 4 times because President Obama and his administration saw the promise of Massachusetts, and we delivered on that promise. In fact, it was just a few weeks ago that Vice President Harris came to Massachusetts, and I was invited to speak to her. And she looked at us, and she said, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here because you're doing the right thing in the Massachusetts legislature, and I want you to go on the road and help other legislatures to act the way that you do, to do what you do. And so that's why when I go to work every day, I think about what result I can get for you in Burlington. Again, I think about how can I help the small businesses, because what they pay in taxes, every dollar they pay comes back to the residents because that's a cost you don't have to bear. what can I do to help the residents themselves, whether it be people helping people or in other ways, our senior citizens and others, our students, our preschoolers and others. And for 10 years, I've delivered for you. I've delivered on the traffic issues. We've talked about that. I brought MassDOT into to a cable show that I do here on BCAT. In fact, that's one of my proudest accomplishments is 10 years running our BCAT show. And I will continue to do that. So folks, it's been my honor and my pleasure to serve as your state representative. I ask for your vote in re-election on September 6th or the days leading up to it.
Thank you, Ken. So that brings our debate to an end. Thank you to the candidates. You know, coming and serving your communities it's a humbling thing to ask for people for their votes. You gave great answers. I think the viewers will be able to see the differences in the issues that are important to both of you, and I'm very thankful. I appreciate it. Thank you to Rich Hosford for sharing asking the questions, and NICCI KADILAK, and thank you, NICCI, for you being involved in the debate. And Jen Dodge, thank you for asking me to do this. I'll do better next time. I'll get it right, and I'm available for presidential debates too, if anyone might need them.
I think CNN is on the line right now.
All right. Well, I have to hold on for a sec with that. So a couple of important dates. The state primary is September 6th. The polls open at 7 a.m. and go until 8 p.m. at the Burlington High School. The state election is November 8th, and early and mail-in voting is available. So you have to reach out and take your opportunity. Your vote's important, and you know, support your candidates. So again, thank you very much from BNEWS.